Welcome back to Enlighten Up for our second episode, which happens to be part 2 of Genesis, Jesus, Strip Clubs, and Spiritual Journeys. If you haven't had a chance to listen to our first episode, I highly suggest you go back and listen to that first, because there is some really interesting stories in there that you don't want to miss out on before you jump into this episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and start that one first. But in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about coincidences and synchronicities. Is it just a coincidence, or what makes it a synchronistic act? We're going to get also a little bit more detail into my spiritual journey, which I'll share with you, and how I got started. But first, let's pick up where we left off, with Michael going on a little bit of a rant on judgment and how detrimental it is to our individual growth and spiritual experiences, as he shares with us how much he appreciates his parents' dedication to their own spirituality. I agree. This is, I mean,
and you know what you said about your parents, it's like, that's a beautiful thing, because you're not judging them. You know, they're religious, but they're happy, and they're happy.
That's why I don't knock the Catholic Church.
That's what's
much.
important.
If they can gain happiness from being Catholic, then more power to them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everybody has to find their own path in their own way, and that's the beauty of spirituality. There is no right or wrong way. We're not going to tell you not to be a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Catholic or
I really don't believe. I can't imagine believing, and I'm pretty sure all two of you guys are connected like this with me too. Like, knowing that there's a one right religion. I just can't believe that. I believe more in spirituality of the heart or the mind or the soul or whatever you want to look at it. But like, just because you joined a club guarantees you a VIP spot in some sort of super plane. No, I can't believe that. It's just so against what I feel like is true.
Yeah, and you have to let your gut guide you. You know, everybody has their own truth.
Yes, and I learned the term discernment very early in my life as well, so I'm very familiar with that as well.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson on the spiritual journey. Huge lesson.
Yeah.
But Lisa, your story is awesome. It's a great story. I mean, you're probably going to live for another 40, 50 years, I would imagine, but there's a lot more to be written in your story. So perhaps what you've learned or what you've went through will come to fruition in the future. I truly hope that in my own personal life, like stuff that I've gone through, God dang it, I hope it means something in the future. But like, it's actually quite amazing to know that a 16-year-old little kid, I mean, you were a little kid, was sitting there talking to Jesus in your room and really trusting was going on, where I would be like, get me the heck out. I got the heebie-jeebies. There's this problem here. There's a random person in my room. I'm freaked out right now. So it's amazing to hear your tale. And because I know you guys so well, I know you well enough to feel like I know you well, it's really beautiful to believe somebody from what they were telling me, instead of like being more like, prove it to me. And that's the hardest thing. You won't be able to prove it. You won't. So
it's a crazy story.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
When I tell my story, I think, wow, like I didn't tell anybody that story.
Yeah, but they always say that the truth is crazier than fiction, and I truly believe that.
Right, and the fact that this is probably one of the only spiritual shows that has to involve a strip club, that's a good
Yep.
Everyone's journey is individual, and you can't judge how they get to where they get on whatever path that takes them there. That I wholeheartedly believe.
I do agree with that too.
We're so busy judging everything. You know, we judge everything. We judge everybody. We put labels on everybody and everything. And, it's such a freeing, beautiful thing to just be able to
not judge is a freeing thing. I mean, like, I don't judge. I try not to. There's times where you like, when some asshole cuts you off in traffic, yeah, you're judging him. But still, there's it's like, just knowing that you're not trying to judge people, your role is not to judge people, is one of the most freeing experiences in my life so far.
Do you know why it feels so freeing?
I guess you're going to have to tell me.
Well, because we're all connected and we're all one. So when we're judging someone else, we're really only judging ourselves. So when you stop putting that out on everyone else, you stop putting it on yourself. So you just start to feel a lot lighter because you're not really hammering yourself every day. Because that's essentially what you're doing.
I appreciate that, but I still, I am my worst critic or judger or whatever. I still have challenges of judging myself on a daily basis. But I will say, ever since talking to you guys and hearing what you guys have to say, I've lessened my chastisement against myself, if you will.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And as you lessen your, chastising others outside of you, that's kind of where, that's the best place to start. It's just, what is it in other people that are irritating me and why, and how can I let that go? And then you start to feel lighter and happier about yourself.
Well, I believe that when you stop judging yourself so much, you instantly stop judging others, because you start to see different things within yourself and you start to gain that acceptance. And I firmly believe that your internal world dictates your external world. So when you start accepting everything that's going on within you, you start to accept everything that's outside of you as well. And so it's kind of like this domino effect.
Right. It's all so circular because we're all one. Mm-hmm. And that's a concept that's really hard to wrap your head around completely. But, you start to understand that that's why everything works. It's the oneness.
The oneness, which we need to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about.
So, Michael, you heard all this, your parents talking in tongue, and so what, you ended up moving away from your parents, right?
Well, the only reason I moved away from my parents is because I know that they are very well taken care of by my other siblings that I have. I would never move, if I was a single child, I'd never move away from my parents like I have. I've moved away, just for the audience, about 3,500 miles away from my parents. But they're well taken care of, and and I truly actually feel, I live in Florida. My parents live in the state of Washington, which is the opposite corner. And I truly do feel that one day I'm going to have to go back. I will go back. And not because my parents will need me, but because I will need my parents. I will need to know more of them and who they are in my life at a certain age for me and at a certain age for them. Because I still think they have a lot they can teach me. And I'm looking forward to it, and sometimes when you move away from something, you appreciate it more. For example, Florida is flat as heck. It's not even our mountains are garbage hills, and so when I go back to even Denver or the state of Washington or Portland, where I'm from, I'm so excited to look at anything topography when it comes to elevation and running up hills, and it's just so enjoyable because I appreciate it more, even though I grew up around it in my life. By moving away from my parents, I realize how much I appreciate more, not just them as people, as my parents, as someone who raised me from birth, but also as there's they have some serious spirituality that they're connected to, and I really love and appreciate that about them, and I really want to learn more about it. And I hope, and maybe this is a gateway into that part of my life, but I hope I get to learn even more from them at a certain point. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I moved away. I mean, we all moved away from our parents. I moved away from my parents when I was, in my early 30s, and it definitely made me appreciate them much more, and it strengthened our relationship. So I can appreciate that for sure. What just happened?
I just showed my video.
Like, why is Michael in my room? I just had a Jesus moment.
What?
You missed out, Lisa.
Did you turn video on?
No, I had to mute it because I was going to move my chair on the thing, so I put the camera on instead of muting it. Like, hello.
It showed up on my computer, and Michael's looking at me, and I'm like, what is going on?
I'm sorry, I don't have like the blue light and the white light and the red light coming from my heart, but it is.
I was wondering why there was all that silence for a second. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, so yeah, I really do want to go back, but I feel like I'm supposed to learn something where I'm at too, if that makes any sense.
To us?
For you guys, of course, everything makes sense for you guys. It's just nothing but like, oh, that's supposed to happen. And I was telling Nicole, I'm so frustrated when people tell me you're supposed to learn something from that. Actually, I was telling both of you guys the other day, you're supposed to learn something from that. You're supposed to learn a lesson. I'm like, no, there's times where I feel like that is just not true. That is so not true. If I use a simple example of like, if I stub my toe, what the heck kind of lesson am I supposed to learn on that?
Maybe I'll tell you. Slow down.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to listen.
Maybe
pay attention.
Okay,
pay attention.
We can make up anything we want on everything that happens in our life as like it's going to be a lesson learned, and that might be the very forgive me, but the Buddhist kind of way of learning about life. Like everything teaches you something, and hopefully you're going to evolve to like some sort of super being. I don't know what's the end game.
You have to listen. You have to pay attention, and that's people don't understand that. They want this Jesus appearing in their room sort of thing to speak to them. But he's, God's speaking to you, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is speaking to you all day long through all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
But we have to slow down enough and pay attention. Pay attention to nature around you. The trees, are talking to you when they're swaying. It just, I know it sounds crazy, but they are. And if you listen, and you take time to be outside and in nature, or pay attention to numbers that are coming in your life, or things that maybe you're overhearing conversations next to you, like certain words jump out at you in a book or in a news article.
Yeah,
or
an ad on a bus drives by you and it just has the perfect message for a question you just asked. Stuff like that happens a lot when you start to pay attention.
And I really believe in like coincidences. So unfortunately, it's like coincidences really play a big role in many people's lives, where it's like you're telling me that if I turn left this day instead of right, my life is completely different. I believe that. But like, I'm not going to go back in time and go, oh, because I turned left that day, my life is completely different. So therefore, God or somebody influenced me to turn left that day. And you guys believe that, where I'm like, no, I just turned left that day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just that you're in denial over where it comes from.
Denial is what you're talking about. True. That's why I'm on the show. I don't know. But it's like I feel more about life happens in coincidences that unless they really start to add up, it's just a coincidence.
Yeah,
I think it's because it's scary to us. We're more afraid to know how powerful we are. That's more scary to us.
I agree. So this whole idea of coincidence is a cover story for you.
Exactly.
Really tapping into the energy potential that you are. And when you start to realize there's nothing random about anything, and that's kind of scientific. So science man, you should be getting on board with that.
There's a reason why they go through a lot of vigorous testing in science, though. They repeat to try to present the same results. And so if 2 results happen, they call it a coincidence. But if they try to times it by 10 and 2 out of the 10 only happen, it's no longer a coincidence. It was like not, it didn't happen.
But they are paying attention. So when you're not paying attention, you're never going to pick up on all the coincidences that then make it no longer a coincidence. It's a synchronistic act.
Synchronicity,
I will agree with. Okay, you got me there.
Yeah. Coincidence is just the fear-based way of looking at synchronicities, because we're too afraid to believe that we are that connected and we're that powerful.
I think we did a great job of introducing the idea of the show. We thoroughly went through Lisa's life.
It's taken us down roads I didn't expect, so.
Like what?
I don't know, just even my story. I had
no your story, and this is where I really truly love you, Lisa, as a person. Is you're so open. Not a lot of people would be happy to announce on the quote unquote podcast airwaves that they used to be a topless dancer, but this is where I really appreciate your super cold honesty, and I like that a lot.
Because I quit judging myself.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the goal, the non-judgment. I like the non-judgment, obviously, but if anybody can get anything out of our podcast, it would be to not judge people so harshly. This world is so full of bullshit fucking judgment. And I have taken my own judgment down a whole complete notch ever since meeting you guys. And I'm not saying that to just say it. It really has. I've looked at people so more accepting as even if they're completely batshit twisted compared to what I believe, I don't really look at them as you're an evil person. It's more you just got some issues that maybe I don't agree with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I hope lots of people can get from our show. But I have a feeling lots of people are going to get a lot of different things from our show. So, Nicole, tell us about your spirituality and how you got to where you're at today.
Well, I mean, I was raised Catholic and I went through all of that already. But it was really weird. I remember I was 17 and I was in up here in Canada, it was HMV, it was just a CD store. And at the age of 17, I was kind of going through all the different CDs, and you could listen to them at the time before you bought them. And I remember listening to one, and it was called Gregorian Chants. And I don't know why I picked that up. This is how I pick my books when I go to the bookstore, is I just look at the cover, the art cover, or I don't know, something pulls me towards it. And this CD just pulled me in. I just knew I had to listen to it. And I put it in there and I started listening to the Gregorian chants, and I just knew I needed to buy it. And so I did. And when I was home with it, I would listen to it while I was taking a bath. I would listen to it while I was just lying on my bed. And the chanting, it's very healing. It's on a frequency, I believe it's the 528 hertz frequency. And that is actually, which I didn't know at the time. I know now, if anyone out there understands sound frequency, but it's a very high vibrational frequency of love. And so when you listen to it, it instantly changes your mood. It changes the way you're feeling. And so I was listening to this music, and I found that it was putting me into, I guess it would be what I would consider my first meditative state. And that was how I started to meditate. That's my first introduction to meditation. And I don't think I really realized it at the time that that's what I was doing, but that's kind of how it all started. And I remember I was on a movie set, so I was really tall, and I started doing a little bit of modeling, and I was an extra on this Bette Midler movie set, and it was being filmed at the Pearson International Airport, and there was this guy there, and there was thousands of us extras there, and there's this one guy I kept seeing him over the 3 days, and he was playing a guitar, and every time I'd walk past him, we'd kind of catch each other's eyes, but he was a good-looking guy, but I didn't really think much of it. And on the third day, towards the end of the night, they were finishing up one of the last scenes, and somehow we got paired together. And I was 18 at this point, and he was 24. And so we ended up they positioned us to be together as a pair against the window. And so during all of the cuts and the breaks, we would chat, and he had like a modeling portfolio, and he was showing me his modeling. He was modeling in Europe and all that kind of stuff. And but he was really down to earth. Like, he was really, really nice person. And so we just started talking, and then they gave us a break for dinner. So him and I went down and we're eating dinner, and he starts to talk to me about energy and color therapy and crystals, and it was everything that I was interested in, but I knew no one who talked about it. And I was intrigued. I was so enraptured in everything that he was talking to me about, and he was teaching me about all this interesting stuff that blew my mind. That I have this guy who's really quite handsome, and but all I'm really enraptured with is all of the stuff that he's talking about, which is all the energy stuff. So we ended up the filming wrapped up, and it was the last night, and so he ended up living close to where I was living at the time. So I gave him a ride home. We exchanged our information, and we ended up becoming like really good friends. And I remember going over to his apartment once, and he gave me this book, it was one of my first books for my spiritual journey, but I don't remember what it was called. But I remember sitting in his bedroom, and he was showing me how to throw energy. And he would light candles, and he would show me how, using my hand from a very far distance away from the candle, how to transfer my energy through the air to put out the candle. And that fascinated me, and he taught me, and I was learning how to do it. And so here I am, 18 years old, with this 24-year-old guy in his bedroom who's like, he's a really good looking guy, and all we're doing is throwing our energy at candles. And this was what I was interested in. Like, anyone who really knows me knows, like, this is my shit. This is what I love. And so that was kind of a really big introduction. And so then I went on to university, and I was studying kinesiology, and I was living on campus my first year. And him and I, we kind of lost touch. We weren't staying in touch that much, but then, one day he messaged me. He's like, we should just meet up. So we did. And he gave me this newspaper clipping, or out of a magazine or something. And it was for a naturopath. And it was about applied kinesiology courses. And I was like, oh, he goes, I just thought, this might interest you. I go, so I'm giving it to you. I'm supposed to give it to you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, it interests me, but I was a student. I was barely making money. I was living off student loans. I was working a little bit, but, it was very little. And so I knew that I couldn't take any of these courses, but they intrigued me. So I just kind of kept that paper clipping somewhere. Well, fast forward a year later, and I'm in my second year of university, which I now know I'm no longer going to be staying at. I knew it was going to be my last year, and I decided I was going to go to massage therapy college because I just didn't. University really didn't speak to me. I didn't like the huge lecture halls. I didn't like the way I felt like a number, not a student. I don't learn well from just listening to people talk.
I hated college too.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, it wasn't my thing.
It was frustrating for me. I felt like it was a lot of wasted money, but just to have a piece of paper that says, oh, hey, you can get a job now.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
So I was dating a guy. We had been dating for almost 2 years, on and off. A really, really destructive relationship. It was not good. And anyway, we broke up, and one day I get a call from the doctor's office, and they tell me that my test results came back, and that they were concerned about something, and they told me that there was no cure for it, basically. And I'm like, I think I'm like 19, about to turn 20 at this point, or maybe I'm 20, I can't remember. And of course, like, I remember standing there. I was standing in my parents' house. No one else was in the house. It was the middle of the afternoon, and I had this huge ball form in my throat because I thought like what they were telling me was true, and I didn't know what to do. And so they just basically tell me they'd like me to come in and talk to me about like certain things and how I can manage certain things. And I just I didn't know, like my whole world just stopped in that moment. And so I just hung up. And so what they had told me was that I had contracted HPV. And so back then, it wasn't really a known thing. And he was the only person, my boyfriend that I had been with, he was the only person I'd ever been sexually active with. I had waited till I was 18 to sleep with anyone. And, I was saving myself for someone I thought I loved. And here I am, doing all the totally honorable things that I thought I was supposed to do. And I got screwed. And I remember just sitting down at the kitchen table with my face in my hands, bawling my eyes out, thinking I'm completely tainted. No man's ever going to want to touch me again. And I didn't know what to do.
On HPV, that 90% of the population has.
Now they do, but not back then. Back then.
They scared the crap out of you, didn't they?
Yeah, there was no such thing as the vaccine. There none of that existed back then. And so I was sitting there, and it was like all of a sudden a light went out, light went on. And I stopped crying, and I remembered the newspaper clipping. And so I ran to it and I looked at it and I knew that I had to call it. I just knew that was my answer, but I didn't know why. And so I called it up, and the man answered. It was a husband and wife naturopathic clinic. And I told him what was kind of going on. And he says, "Oh, you need to talk to my wife. She can help you." And so I ended up seeing his wife, and I would see her once a month. And when I first went to see her and I told her what was going on, she looked at me and she's like, "Nicole, it's just a virus." She goes, "Your body can get rid of it if you want to release it." She goes, "Don't listen to what the doctors are telling you." And I said, "Okay." And from that point on, that is when I really started to stray away from Western medicine. And I don't want to say that it's bad, because I do believe that Western medicine has its place. And so that's not what this is about. But I really wasn't, I'm not of the mind of cutting things out and popping pills to mask symptoms. That's just not who I am. I stopped taking Tylenol when I was a teenager. I just wouldn't take it for headaches. So it really resonated with what she was saying. And within 6 months of treatment with her, I'd see her once a month, I went to go get tested and it was gone. And the doctors just told me that it's dormant. It's not really gone. It's just dormant. And I said, "But is it there?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, it's because I've been seeing this naturopath," and they just didn't want to hear anything about it. And so I thought that really kind of sealed the deal for me, because I'm open to a lot of different beliefs, but if you're not willing to stay open to what I'm presenting to you as a potential reason as to why this is no longer in my body, then I'm not interested in continuing down that path. So that woman really changed my life. And I ended up seeing her for years, and as a student, I was making very little money, but I was paying these monthly treatments just to go see her, because I started to see a lot of value in what was happening when I went to go see her. She introduced me to past life regression. We started healing things. Actually, past life regression was one of the things we used to heal my body to get rid of the HPV. And we did a whole bunch of different things. She taught me how to visualize light and bring it into my body for meditation, which I could feel. That's when I really started to become aware of energy in my body and the vibration of energy. I really started to tune into that. We did this thing called dolphin brain repatterning, which she did on my head. I don't even know what it was, but she started to introduce me to a whole bunch of different things. She introduced me to the Pleiadians. She's like, "You need to read about the Pleiadians, Nicole." And I didn't know at the time why. Now I know why. She introduced me to a whole bunch of different things. She really opened me up. But I think what the biggest thing for me was, every time I left her clinic, I felt incredible. I felt like I was on this high of happiness and joy. And so I knew there was something there. And over the course of me doing this, I took my massage therapy college course, which was 2 years, and I started massaging. And that's when I started to become really aware of feeling other people's energy. So when I would be massaging people, for instance, if I had my hands on their feet, I could feel the pulse of energy coming from their body into my hands and back from my hands into their body. I could just feel these waves coming in and out. And so energy work started to just become a daily practice of mine. Like I just felt it all the time. And then when I started to use hot stones in my treatment, I started to see colors. So I would see this color of red follow the stones down the body almost every single time I did a hot stone treatment, which stones are like the root. It's the earth, so it's kind of like the root chakra, which is red. So I started to see colors. And so like that's kind of like, so it's like, a few years this went by, and then I ended up having my own place living in the city of Toronto, and I started to really gravitate more towards meditation, like really wanted to get deeper into it. And so I had met a few people that were interested in having a group meditation. So I started to hold group meditations at my condo. And that's when we started to practice this technique that I now teach and use, which I call like free flow imagination, where you just let your mind kind of go to anywhere that it's going to go and let it tell you a story. And that really opened things up for me, because there were times where all four of us were seeing the same thing after we would talk about what we saw. And it was happening more and more. And so I started to understand, like Lisa said, like we're all connected. Why is it that all of us are seeing the same thing? And so I started to understand that. I also had
You're seeing the same thing. Does this like your imagination, like you're imagining the same things, or excuse my 3D brain, but literally seeing the same things?
Yeah, in my mind. So I'm getting these visions in my mind, like a movie, and everyone else was getting this very similar visions, very similar. Like I remember there was one point where we all saw the guy that we would all take turns, where we would focus our energy on one person within the group, and usually what would come forth is insights or messages for that person. And we all saw this one guy standing on a rock on a lake, like by the edge of a lake, doing like yoga, and we all saw it. But none of us knew that we saw it until we started talking about it. Like, oh, I saw that too. And it was weird that all four of us saw the exact same image. So that's what we were seeing. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, that's the, coming from my perspective, dealing with both of you guys, it's like you visions and things that you see. That's the hardest part, is like, because I'm so connected with, like, okay, if I can see it, I can touch it. But like that's where you guys take it whole to a new level. So visions to me are daydreams and imagination, and waking up from a very vivid dream or something like that, where you guys have like a whole new perspective on that. It means a lot more on what you just imagined. Or I mean, this goes back to like even when with your friend Fred, when he's like saying your imagination is the most powerful thing, because if your imagination imagines it, it's true. And I just got so lost in those thoughts, like, no, that's not true. I can imagine I have $1 million in my bank account. I look at my bank account, it's not true. So that's where it's like, it's very hard for me to like understand what you guys are talking about when you're saying visions and things like that. Does that make sense too?
So okay, where you get tripped up on that is that it's a possibility. It's a possible truth. It could be true. So maybe not on this timeline it's not true, but it could be on another timeline, which I know is another whole
yeah.
can of
so
worms.
That's like a whole can of worms or whatever if you want to call it. But like it's fine. But like imagination is great. It's creative. That's where a lot of our things in this world has come from, was somebody's original imagination. Yeah.
Yeah. Source is creation. So creativity is our biggest power. That's one of our strongest powers, is creativity.
Right. And then then you go back to the idea that, like, you got kids that have imaginary friends or something like that, but they grow out of it. I mean, there's so many. This is what's a crazy world, in my opinion, that you guys are living. Not crazy in a bad way, like crazy, like it's hard to fathom. And so when you guys say that, it would be very coincidental. I'll give you that. If 4 of us were imagining the same thing at one time, I will say that would be trippy. But trippy to a point where I'm like, okay, there's got to be something more than it's just an imaginary thought. So that's kind of what I appreciate about your story, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that on another episode.
Yeah, I know. Sorry to interject, but yeah, just my thought.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
Podcast.
Yeah. But like, so I was doing things like I got my Reiki attunement, and oh my God, once I got my Reiki attunement, which is when you become a Reiki healer, or what it basically does is it opens your energy flow even more. So I remember 1 or 2 nights after I got my Reiki attunement, something really weird happened to me one night. So I woke up in the middle of the night because I felt this really weird energy enter my room. And I was lying on my back in my bed, and this spinning of energy was going around over my abdomen. Like I just felt like the energy, it was almost like a vortex was being created right in my stomach and then above my stomach. And I could feel it, and I'm just lying there going, what the hell is happening right now? But then I also felt like this really negative energy was in the room. And I don't know how else to describe it. I know it sounds weird, but it felt like something really evil was in my room. And I didn't know if this vortex was being created because this energy wanted to come into my body or what was going on. But I was so scared. I was like 6 years old, and I just threw the covers over my head and I said, whatever you are, you leave my room right now. Like, I'm done. Like, shut this down. Like, I don't want this anymore. Like, just shut it down. And then everything just stopped. And so I don't know what that was, but that was kind of my first experience with a negative energy, so to speak, that I couldn't see. I could just only feel. And so fast forward from there, I just one day woke up, went into work, and knew that I was tired of the rat race. I was tired of working. I was working like so much. I was working sometimes 7 days a week. I had been working 5 years without a vacation, and I just knew I needed to change my life. So I decided to leave Toronto and move down to the Cayman Islands. And it really happened so fast as soon as I made that decision. And actually, that's when I started to realize how when I started to align my choices with my heart's desires, things would just fall into my lap. And I started to become really aware of that law of attraction idea, the whole idea of law of attraction. And when you just let go and trying to control things, things start to come to you. And so I made this decision to move down there, and I was only going to go for like half a year, 7 or 8 months. And I ended up staying there for 9 years almost. And it really was one of the best things for me because it allowed me to kind of slow life down from all the city living. And I started to appreciate smaller pleasures of life and just simplifying life. And it made me really realize very soon after moving down there that I wanted to start doing things that made me really happy and stop doing things because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. So a year and a half after I moved down there, I quit my job and I left and I went traveling for a year and took a 1-year sabbatical off work and backpacked by myself through Costa Rica for a couple months. And through there, I went to this meditation, this silent meditation retreat for 10 days. And that's when things really shifted for me. Like, that's when things really shifted. Because that's when I started to do my inner work. That's when I started to look inside and say, what's really going on here? Why am I so unhappy? Why am I always seeking outside of myself? And that was the beginning of what is now, I guess, a decade of learning and understanding why things are the way they are, where my happiness really comes from, connecting with a deeper part of who I am, living life to bring meaning, not just to live it, like all of that. And I just, from there on is when I found yoga, which I used to hate, and then I ended up loving it. And I just found a new appreciation for my body, for myself. And that's kind of where it all went to there. And I ended up ended up moving back to the island and living down there. And then I just knew I hit my ceiling. I hit my ceiling professionally. I hit my ceiling spiritually, and I knew I needed a change. And that's when I decided to leave and spend half my time in Colorado and half my time in Toronto, back up in Canada. And that's kind of where the next phase of my journey came. And that's when things really took off for me, is when I moved to Colorado. Something about that state and the mountains. But that's when I began meditating every day. Sometimes for 2 hours a day, and I started doing a lot of more healing. I was just being drawn to certain healers and doing other work, and that's when I started to open up to my angels and guides. That's when they started talking to me, was a year ago, and I'd never had that before. And so all of a sudden they're showing up in my meditation. I have this man talking to me in a forest. I don't know who he is. And then, I start to get some outside guidance on it, and I start to realize who it is. And it was Archangel Michael. And as soon as I allowed that to come in, it's like it opened the floodgates. And then all of a sudden I was being contacted by a whole slew of different spirit guides and all of that. And it just opened me up so much that I started to see a lot more energy, just like during the day. At night, I see like lights in my room. I see things. I see orbs flying around.
Fairies.
Yeah, oh God, everyone's going to think I'm crazy now. Yes, I see fairies. All the stuff that we're told doesn't exist. It freaking exists. And I don't know how else to say it. You won't believe it until you see it, but you have to believe it in order to see it. And that's the problem. So, yeah, so that's where I'm at now. Nothing big.
And that's the reason why we have a show.
Yeah.
Because I heard this all in one night, folks. Fairies, aliens, inner earth, everything else. I'm like, what the hell are these two girls talking about?
Yeah, I just had ETs contact me last weekend. That was pretty
fun.
God.
So this is the point. I see I'm very skeptical, of course, but like I enjoy this sci-fi-ness going on, if you will. But it's not sci-fi to them, Nicole and Lisa, but it is to me. But like, you're going to have to really sell me on a bunch of your stuff.
Well, it's not so much that we have to sell you. We'll just chat about it. And I mean, no one has to believe me. It doesn't change my reality.
When I say sell me, like to convince me, you're going to have to do a good job. And I would imagine there's probably people that would be listening that would agree with that statement. But I'm sure there's lots of people that are listening that would agree completely with you and Lisa too. So it's like, that's why it's going to be an enjoyable show.
Yeah. Well, I'm used to people thinking I'm crazy. My whole family thinks I'm crazy. Although I will say, I think my dad's starting to come around after a few experiences lately. But that's why I've never talked about this stuff with most people that I know, at least back in Canada, because it was still not spirituality's always been a huge part of my life, but I never really talked about it because I knew that people just didn't want to hear what I was talking about, or it would make them uncomfortable. They couldn't understand. And I completely get it, I understand. But like last year, I finally made the decision that I'm not going to hold back who I am anymore. And this is who I am. And this is what I believe. And ever since I've done that, that's what strengthened everything for me. Now I see so much more. Now, like Lisa and I can starting to speak telepathically to one another. The dreams that I have, they're not dreams. Some of them are not dreams in the way that we think they're dreams. listen, like there is a lot out there that is available to us if you're willing to kind of be open-minded and just explore. But
pay attention.
Yeah, pay attention. But we're going to talk about all that fun stuff.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So
I love hearing Nicole's stories. It's like, reality TV, just at its best.
God, I don't want my life to sound like reality TV. That's horrible.
Your last name is... Oh, no, never mind. It's not a Kardashian.
Frolic?
Frolic, that's right. Not Kardashian. Nicole Kardashian that doesn't rhyme.
Oh, God, please do not. Please.
Well, I think a great topic would be based off of, what we've already talked about in sort of an introduction, something in the beginning, is frauds in all dimensions, and people's perception on spirituality and...
Okay, so let's talk about like next episode, like what turns people on to spirituality, what turns people off, who are the fakes, who's the real McCoy, like how do you know? Like I think that's a really good topic.
Yeah, I just think that would be a great first topic. Our stories.
I guess it'd be good for me because I'm not quite sure what to bring to the show, so I guess I'll just bring my.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll just bring my mind and ask you guys questions as you guys talk about it.
You know what? Okay, so let's do that. So to all of our listeners, that's going to be our next episode. And anything goes, as you can see, anything goes here. And we are having no judgment here on this show. And we'll just see where it takes us, because many times it takes us in places we have no idea or preparation for where that ends up being, as many of our experiences taught us. So
just drinking wine, just chilling.
Yeah, we're drinking. If you're not driving, we encourage you to drink with us. Yeah, we're breaking the spiritual stigmas. This is just real life spirituality, our experiences. We're just sharing them and trying to figure out what all of it means.
No, tell me more before you guys get off. Frauds, like give a little bit of a teaser of like a potential fraud that you're talking about.
Oh, don't you dare try to do that.
No, I'm serious. Like I have no clue on what you guys are talking about unless you're literally talking about like media and stuff like that.
Like drinking purple Kool-Aid. Like what turns you off to spiritual people? What turns you off? What's your initial thought? It's like what turns you off to religion? Okay, people don't want to buy into religion for a certain reason, right? And then people don't want to buy into spirituality for a certain reason. So what are those reasons?
That I can handle. That's a good topic then. We can do that.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I think that's an important topic.
Yeah. All right. So, and if any of our listeners out there have questions, you can send it to us at info@enlightenup.us. We would love to have any questions from you that we can answer on the show. You can also go to our website, enlightenup.us. We also have a Twitter and a Facebook page, so you can look us up there. And please, we're looking for some ratings, so if you can rate this show, that would be incredible. And let us know what you think. And we hope to have you with us next week when we're back on.
All right, kids. Till next time.
All right. Awesome. Later.
Bye.